you know, the translation is really amazing, and I think it's one of the great successes of the books is just how beautifully translated it is.
Yes.
Did you work at all with the translator? Or?
Yes, I worked a
Sean
lot
Cotter
with Sean. Yeah, I worked a lot with him, and I want to tell you all that a translator is not like a janitor of literature. He just takes a French word and put an English one instead. He is a great artist. A great translator is extremely precious in this literary world, let's say. He's much more precious and much more important than we might think. A good translator can create you in another language, can ensure your celebrity even in another language. A bad translator could destroy you. A bad translator could give you, could make your book unreadable, actually. And no one has the patience to see what was on the writer's mind if the language in which the book is translated is bad. I am, from this point of view, I'm a very lucky and happy guy, because I work with the most tremendous group of translators that we have ever had for the Romanian language. I would say that some of them are geniuses of the translation, and I mean especially the German translators, Gerhard Scheika and Ferdinand Leopold, who incidentally received the greatest prizes for translation of Germany for doing my book, and and many others. And now I'm very happy that I could add Sean Cotter to this excellent group of translators. I'm very proud of having found him, and very proud of having worked with him. He brought a crucial contribution to this book.
We were talking beforehand, and it may have also been when I was talking to Jill. Romanian writers have always had a relatively privileged position in Paris. There have been, historically, throughout the 20th century, there were so many Romanian exiles in Paris.
Yeah.
There's the tradition of Chora and the tradition of Ionescu. My sense is that has switched slightly to Germany. It seems like Romanians get translated to German. They have an audience. They have a receptive. There's a certain receptivity to translation from Romanian that I don't know if it still exists in France. I assume it probably does in some level, but it does seem like you have a more privileged position in Berlin as a Romanian writer probably now than you did, than you would have certainly 20 years ago. And I thought about this. I'd love to hear what you'd have to say about that, but I also am interested to talk to you about, we'll shift over to the sociopolitics of the novel, about the situation in Romania today for writers.
Well, I'm being translated so far in more than 20 languages, big languages and small languages, in big cultures and small cultures. And I want to tell you that I don't make any difference between them. I'm as happy to be translated into English and be published in the States as being translated into Serbian or Bulgarian or I don't know, even Basque, for example. For me, all of them are precious because I'm not writing for getting reviews or prizes or I don't know what other things coming out from them, but I'm writing for the people. I'm writing for the readers. So for me it's very important that the Catalans or the Basques or the Bulgarians have access to my books, as well as the Americans or the French or I don't know who. So if I can find 3 or 4 passionate readers for this book of mine and some other books of mine, I'm really very happy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be Dan Brown or somebody else who sells millions of books. I'm very pleased if I can sell a decent number of books,
Mm-hmm.
and they can get to real readers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I say it all the time, there is nothing like a great writer without a great reader. Joyce could have written much much more books than Finnegan's Wake or Ulysses, but if there wasn't a reader prepared to get those books and to at least try to read something from Finnegan's Wake, these books were in vain.
Mm-hmm.
A writer of genius make us all geniuses, the ones who read him, and a reader of genius has this quality to be essential in the act of writing and reading, which is an act of communication. So a book is only an interface. A book is nothing without its two faces, the writer and the reader. And for me, it doesn't matter which nationality is the reader. For me, it matters that he has the same inner encyclopedia that I have, as Umberto Eco would have said, and he or she has the same cult as I have for the good literature and for beauty, in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting observation, and I mean, I guess what I was trying to get at was that, you know, at one point, the translation into French was a real gateway for Romanian novelists, and also for Albanians. For, you know, we wouldn't have it. We'd be less likely to have Ismail Kaderi in English if he hadn't been translated into French, or hadn't written in French. And you know, I was thinking when I was reading a little bit about when I was basically looking into your history of the last couple of years, I was reading about the boycott that you helped lead at the Salon du Livre, which must have been painful. This is I think it was Romania was the guest country. This was 2 years ago, is that right? Or was it 2012, last year, in Paris, which was for promoting Romanian literature, and you felt compelled or impelled to lead writers in boycotting that international exposure.
This happened
what's
this
the story
spring,
with
actually.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you? What led to that? And what does that say about?
Well, there are some
today?
cultural wars in Romania today, like it might be in the States too. It's the very bad influence of politics everywhere. Politics is like a cancer in Romania. It spreads very fast and touches each and every essential organ of our social life, including culture. That is why, because of our very complicated political situation and because of very few persons that you could rely on in our politics, the cultural institutions are accaparrated, are appropriated by the political parties which are in power.
Mm-hmm.
This happened recently with our most important cultural institute, our most important institution, the Romanian Cultural Institute, which was taken from a public person and a wonderful philosopher who ran it for the last 7 years, and given to a person which actually destroyed it, completely destroyed this very modern and very efficient institution. And some of the intellectuals that were the most prominent in my country refused to go to Paris as a protest against this destruction of the Romanian Cultural Institute. And our protest was very, very welcome and efficient, and it followed that this person was actually fired after that.
Oh, really? Okay.
From this institution, and some other person came in his place.
Uh-huh.
So it was a very big opportunity for us
Which is quite effective.
to say our opinion, to speak our opinion in this case.
Mm-hmm. Is it more difficult to be a writer today in Bucharest than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Well, you know,
I mean, we read constantly about
it has always been difficult to be a writer in Romania and outside Romania, of course, but mainly inside the country, because Romania is not a place where you can become famous. Romania is a place like one of the villages in the Midwest here, a place where you know that you can evade from. You can go from there. In the real big cities where there is the real life and the real centers of evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So you can produce a very good literature in your country, but you have to sell it abroad. You know, that is why the writers that you mentioned, Emil Cioran, Mircea Eliade, and other big names, Eugen Ionesco, had success because they emigrated to Paris, to New York, to London, and so on. So in the centers of validation, what they did in their own country, they sold abroad.
Mm-hmm.
This was their strategy, and it worked very much. At the same time, we had other writers, much bigger than them, much more important, much more significant, who stayed in Romania and never became famous. Nobody knows them outside Romania.
Mm-hmm.
So each and every writer from Romania have this dream to be translated abroad and to become famous in a way abroad, to make it himself or herself a name abroad, which is very reasonable in a way.
Mm-hmm. So, I see a hand in the back.
I have a question. You guys have both talked about a lot of male writers. Are there any female writers that influenced you in writing these 3 books?
Many of them, very, very many, but the most powerful influence on this book and other books of mine has been Virginia Woolf. Yeah. With some of her novels, of course, The Waves, her masterpiece, but also Orlando. Orlando was very important for me because it was a book much ahead of its time, in my opinion. Imagine that in the 30s, someone had this courage to create a character and make him live for 200 years, cross the whole history of England for 200 or 300 years, and at the middle change from a man to a woman. It's Marquez, avant la lettre. So this book influenced me very much in another book of mine, a little novel called Travesty, where almost the same happens. Androgynous child was raised at first as a girl, and then at the age of 4 it was an operation, and after that the girl became a boy and forgot he was a girl once. Yeah.
Does he remember at some point? Or?
Sorry?
Does he remember at some point, or does the lack of memory continue into?
No, it was a Freudian process of forgetfulness. And then when the character was 17, he was sexually aggressed, homosexually aggressed by a colleague in a summer camp, and then this provoked him a sort of an anamnesis, and at last he remembers. But it's a long and very painful process for him.
You know, we should point out after that question that your best-selling book is Why We Love Women.
Yeah.
Which was done in conjunction with Romanian L, which I didn't know L had a Romanian version.
Yes, it has even a very nice one. And they asked me to write a monthly story for them, and I did it with much amusement because I love to do all sorts of crazy things. I refused Playboy before yet, but I wrote a row of stories, about 20 stories, which I'm very proud of them, and which I published in this book that you mentioned. Well, my title was The Paper Devil, but my publisher changed it into a more vendable.
Yeah, vendable is a good word.
Title. When he did this, he said, well, if we replace this silly title, The Paper Devil, what the hell is it? With Why We Love Women.
Why We Love Women.
Your sellings will grow 4 times. And the truth is that they grew 40 times. It's my only bestseller.
Stick with the Romanian publishers and not the Bulgarian publishers.
Yeah,
when it comes to vendable advice.
This is for sure. Yeah.
Do y'all? Is there anybody else have anything you'd like to ask Sal?
You mentioned Esterhazy and Peter Nadesh. Do you think of this trilogy as either, you know, in dialogue with or in competition with like Esterhazy's big books about his parents, or parallel stories, or other central?
No, I'm not in any competition with anyone. I only admire them very much. Peter Esterhazy is one of my great friends. I had many times the opportunity to have to share some grants and things like that with him. I once stayed door to door with him, but it was a silly thing happened by that time. He could only speak German and I could only speak English. So we just said hello. We met and couldn't actually have a talk together. But after that he learned English. I couldn't learn German, unfortunately, and we could speak a lot. And when I received this Berlin Prize, he gave the laudatio, the discourse for me, which was very nice of him. No, I'm only in a very fierce competition with myself at different ages, with the Mircea Cărtărescu who wrote Nostalgia, with Mircea Cărtărescu who wrote The Levant, with Mircea Cărtărescu who wrote Travestii and the poems and so on. So sometimes I'm very angry with them, because I feel that I would never be better than them in writing. It's a very, very hard competition for me.
And a marathon too.
Yeah.
When you talked about your process of self-hypnosis, how you just wrote it in one straight and never went back and never changed anything, obviously it's very complicated, the book, and it becomes more and more complicated as you go on. In order to continue on this long road, would you reread parts from before and then continue on, or how did you do that?
Yes, I usually, as I said, I reread each time when I started to write. I only write in the morning, I cannot write, but from about 10 to about 12 or 1 o'clock. After 2 o'clock, I'm a complete idiot. I never write anything, I just read from time to time. Each time I reread the previous page that I wrote the previous day and write in the same key. And if I notice that I like the detail from the previous page, I develop it. I develop it. So many characters that I have, there are over 200 characters in this book. Many of them were born from from a gesture, or from a word, or from something at random. And then I realized its potential. So I developed the character, and sometimes it became, he became or she became an important one. Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, I think so.
When you say you like your pages to be very clean,
Yeah.
and you don't want erasures and ink blots and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, did that ever inhibit you? Like if you didn't have something ready to go,
Yeah.
did that make you stop and wait until you, and then go, how did
You know, you're amazing. Yeah, you are. You are very intuitive, because this happened hundreds of times. I just started to write a phrase and stop in the middle of it because I couldn't know, I didn't know how to continue it. Not to make some crazy mistake and be forced to erase it. So many times I only wrote one phrase or two phrases a day.
Wow.
And then stopped, and till
you
the
didn't
next
start with a word, you know, I'm going to
till
write
the
50
next
words
day I
today.
thought what to do with that phrase, not to take it out, and I invented something to save it, in a way.
Oh,
But that's an interesting thing, because when painters work alla prima, for example, I mean, they really have to prepare. It's like prize fighters go into a boxing match, you know. They train up to that moment. They design it. They think about it. And
Not
then you
all
get
of
the
them.
whole mural. You know, I mean, Matisse, when he made the Barnes Foundation mural, talks about this. I mean, and like what he writes about, like what it means to
Not all of them.
prepare to do alla prima.
Yeah, yeah. I know
Gesture
what you
painting.
mean, yeah. Of course, if we only think of the great painters of the Renaissance, some of them planified everything. So they first made some big cardboard.
The maquettes. And,
Yes.
And then they divided
Maquettes.
it up into
And yes, with squares, and everything was drawn
Mapped
drawn
out, and,
on it.
Mhm.
But some others didn't. For example, Raphael did this kind of pre-planning everything, but Pontormo, who followed and who was the first Mannerist painter actually, after Michelangelo, never had a plan. He never knew what he would paint. He started, you know, how the fresco painters do. They cover the wall with plaster, with wet plaster. Only the surface they think they will be able to complete that very day. And he started, like in a cadavreschi, he started drawing a character who crossed his mind. And this character had a hand only drawn till here. The next day, he put another piece of plaster on the wall and continued that hand. But he didn't know what that hand actually
was holding, right?
hold it. It could be an apple. It could be, I don't know what. An Apple mobile phone. So it was a continuous invention. And this is why his works are so strange.
Yeah, and the color is so
Nothing
weird.
is
in them, too.
planified, yeah.
It's always the most garish of the garish colorists. Of it.
He did bring maquettes and cartoons to the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah, some of them, yes.
So was there never a single instance in the process of writing all 3 volumes where you crossed something out in the manuscript?
Could you repeat, please?
Did you ever cross anything out in the you talked about writing on a clean page, and did you ever revise or cross anything out as you were writing all 1,500 pages of this book?
Not in this book. In the book that I'm writing now, for example, I write it not in little notebooks, but in big ones that we call in our country student books, bigger ones, A4, you know, or legal as you say it. What I do now I'm growing a bit older, so I cannot afford to write in the same manner. But if I want to add anything, I use those post-it yellow squares, and I stick them on the pages. So each time I want to add anything, and if I want to take something out, I have I just do it. So I just
Cross it out.
yes. But it's a very different kind of book. It's my first book for which I'm doing research. You know, I cannot go on with inspiration like I used to.
Well, I think we're getting close to the witching hour, so why don't we call it a night? And thank you so much. Thank you. Obviously, there are many copies for sale, so avail yourself of that.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for coming.